Hello and welcome to a Thursday edition of Planet Waves TV, standing in for Starcast on Planet Waves. My name's Eric Francis Coppolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer here, reporting in from the fair burg of Kingston, New York. I'm recording at about 3:19 p.m., and this is the edition that accompanies the April 4th weekly horoscope and the April 4th essay. And today is the 120th birth anniversary of my godmother, benefactor, and beloved great-aunt Josie Josephine Nicastro Sharp. If you can hear me, hello. Okay, so this is pretty much the last, well, I'm doing a program tomorrow night on Planet Waves FM, but the last weekly horoscope and Planet Waves article pertaining to the total solar eclipse of Monday, the 8th of April 2024. This is a significant eclipse, at least, well, just generally. It's in Aries. That alone makes it extra relevant. And then additionally, there really have only been two eclipses that have solar eclipses, by which I mean total solar eclipses, that have covered a wide swath of the American landmass. The 2012 solar eclipse. So the Great American Eclipse. Those years are always blurry for me for various reasons. But the last time anything like this happened, it was also the first time anything like this happened, was the total solar eclipse of the summer of 2017. Which went from Oregon all the way down to the Carolinas, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, and that, if you had not noticed, has had a profound effect on American history. You really can make a before and after of those years. 16, 17, 17 was the first year that Trump was in office. This was going on at the same time as a lot of other activity in Aries, particularly Uranus conjunct Eris in Aries. And I have been writing a kind of endless streak of articles over the past 5 or 10 years about the nature of digital conditions and how they relate to Aries. And so that is what I've written in my article this week. And then I end it on a personal note. The horoscope provides personal interpretations for all of these. Horoscope is never a collective type of endeavor. It's always directed at your personal life, your personal experience of the astrology. And then I've left the horoscope open and connected to it. I've put a series of ads in for recent readings that pertain to the eclipse, the Aries studio reading, once in a lifetime. By the way, that is good for everyone. And then the somewhere in between written and video readings, and then the eye of the Centaur readings that talk about the nature of Chiron and Eris in this eclipse. And as I cover, so that is where you can get really good personal information. If you're someone who's ever thought, oh, well, I'd like to take a workshop at Omega Institute, maybe I really should go for some therapy or some kind of serious self-help endeavor. Well, one of the things I do in my astrology is I kind of bundle up decades of spiritual training and spiritual workshops and teaching at places like the Omega Institute. And I had an absolutely phenomenal therapist named Joseph Trusso, who I later trained with for many years. So what I am able to do with astrology in my different presentations is to make sure that it is as relevant and helpful as therapy. And frankly, I'm afraid there's not that much good therapy available anymore. Plus, it takes a really long time, and it's very expensive compared to the work that I'm doing. And I would just propose that if you think some of that might be helpful to you, my readings are worth the small investment. So that all said, that moment of self-actualization sponsorship Yes, I am on a mission, and most of it involves those readings. So the rest of this, yes, it's supportive and it brings you into it. And the weekly horoscope keeps you apace with the aspects as they change, and they're kind of philosophical works. But those audio, video, and written readings are there's nothing else like them. I am feeling a little rough around the edges at the moment, but still feeling good. You should see the rest of this office. It kind of looks like a small grenade went off. There's lots and lots of charts, but I want to focus on a couple of points from the eclipse chart that I don't think that I have adequately covered. So they'll be here in 1 to 2 minutes. Before I say that, Venus entered Aries today. So Venus is on the Aries point today. That would be Thursday. And then on Sunday, the moon enters Aries ahead of the eclipse in Aries. And right after it does that, it forms an eclipse. The moon forms an eclipse to Venus. So almost any planet can get eclipsed if it's in the range of the moon, the declination range of the moon. So Venus certainly is. And so there's what's called an occultation of Venus on Sunday the 7th, and that's kind of preparation for the eclipse on Monday. So there's really 2 eclipses. I think a total non-central occultation and a total eclipse of the sun in Aries. And I have seen very few eclipses that have this level of almost passion described by the chart. The last one that came anywhere near this was the August 11th, 1999 total solar eclipse in Leo, and that happened concurrently with a grand cross. The fixed signs were all filled, and that was getting even more prophecy than this one is. People reading the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and the all kinds of Book of Revelation stuff, because the fixed signs are illustrated in the Book of Revelation and the World Tarot card and all that stuff. So this is a big one, and it is in Aries, and Aries is such an important sign of self-discovery and of self-inquiry. And yet, because we are in the digital age, we have had basically all of the metaphors for self-discovery taken outside of ourselves, projected out into the world, and also the internet has completely swallowed metaphor, and human consciousness is a function of our ability to think and construct metaphors. And that is a sad thing. And it's not only that the metaphors now that we use are almost all computer-based metaphors, but rather the internet has completely swallowed almost all of our capacity to think in symbols, things that represent things one thing representing another, which provide illustration for our experience and illustration for growth and lots of other things. So one of the things that astrology gives us is a set of references that have nothing to do with computer technology, nothing to do with much technology at all. These are mythical. They're essentially ancient visionary symbols that are recast in a modern context. And I've mentioned many times that the eclipse takes place Chiron. All of the eye of the Centaur type symbolism is coming from this conjunction of Moon, Sun, Chiron at 1924 of Aries. That's very rare. I mean, I could, I was very happy to hear my friend Daniel G. Mario say that it was basically impossible to have that happen, and yet here we are. I've been saying the same thing. It seems impossible, but here we are. In this impossible moment, and that becomes the first metaphor, something that just you would think this cannot happen, but here it is. And remember that Chiron is an invitation to awakening. It's an invitation to healing. It is an invitation to recognize that healing is always a holistic process. It is always about connecting the whole to the part and the part to the whole, and seeing the world in a drop of water, basically, the world in a grain of sand. It's about understanding the microcosmic relationship to the macrocosm. And I know those sound like fancy ideas, but when you start to experience them as real things, as direct experiences, then it's a whole other thing. Okay, so that is one thing that Chiron lines up with the eclipse to the degree. Now, while that's going on, Eris is sitting there moving real slow in Aries. It was in Aries when you were born. It's going to be in Aries for quite a while longer. It moves that slowly, more than 130 years in Aries. That is Ms. Eris. I think the orbit currently calculated at 556 years, more than double the orbit of Pluto. Pluto takes a while to go around the sun. Eris takes twice as long, and it's back in Aries, has been since 1922. And for this eclipse, Mercury, see, it's in the same degree, in the same sign, within 3 arc minutes, retrograde. So it's applying. When a planet's applying, when a conjunction is applying any aspect, really, before it's happened, it's got more potency. It's like something it's describing something in the immediate, imminent future. So that's going on too. This brings Chiron and Eris right out to the front. That's what I write about in my article this week. I don't go at great lengths to demonstrate or prove that these things are associated with digital consciousness. The essay is long enough. I'm not writing a book. I have kind of written about this theme now back to kind of when I met Andrew McLuhan, I think in 2015. Okay, so those are the things I've talked a lot about. Now let's talk about things I haven't talked a lot about. Of them, thing one is that Mars, you see Mars here, Mars, that's a nice illustration of conch and balls. Isn't that interesting? And Venus, see Venus with a little cross down there? That's a little pussy-like, and Mars is a little cock and balls-like. And Mars is in a very close conjunction to Saturn. Again, applying. Mars moves faster. Its number is lower. It's moving towards Saturn. People are describing this as a collision. By the way, it's significant particularly because Mars rules Aries, where all these fireworks are going on. And so when you see a lot of stuff going on in a sign, you want to know a little bit more about it. Ask yourself about the ruler of that sign, see what it's doing. And what Mars is doing is it's about to form a conjunction to Saturn in Pisces. And this is the imaginary obstacle. This is the thing that seems like an obstacle, that seems like a barrier of some kind. It's kind of like you think the door is locked and you lean on it and it pops open. You didn't even need to bash into it. Or you think that this fence goes on for miles and miles, so you pick a direction and you walk in that direction and you find out the fence ends like in 25 feet. So that's kind of like what this is. Mars does not strike or hit Saturn. It just very quietly passes in front of it. So pay attention to the obstacles that you think you see, you think you perceive, and ask yourself if there's not some way over, through, above, or around that obstacle. Saturn itself is moving. It's going to form a conjunction to Nessus. That's in July. It's part of the scenario of this year. But it doesn't make an exact conjunction. It comes within 1 degree in July and then crosses the degree of Nessus in February, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a two-part event. And Mars will give us a little flavor of Nessus when it crosses Nessus, probably in about a week and a half. I don't have that date calculated. So that's one thing that's going on here. And so there's the eclipse, and then there's some kind of a story behind the scenes being told here. And you may recognize what this is about. Something about a relationship to authority, whether your own or someone else's, something about a relationship to structure, something about a need to take action. Normally, Mars kind of represents the gas and Saturn represents the brakes. I think in last week's horoscope, I confused that and talked about the gas and the accelerator. I meant the gas and the brakes. Sorry about that. Aries probably noticed that and figured out exactly what I meant. And so when you see Mars and Saturn close to each other, that's the time to really pay attention to what you are doing with various forms of braking and acceleration. And I realize that we're in the age of just say don't and just say no, and consent usually means no, and everything's about no right now, and everyone's having kind of a no fest, which to me seems kind of anal retentive stage, right? At a certain point, you have to stop impressing your parents with your ability to hold your shit in and let it out. Then from there, once you've done that and you learn bowel control, then you proceed to genital stage. This is Freud, but it is a kind of a good working metaphor. And so here we are in this age of don't and no and resist and refuse and that all this stuff. We've got to get over ourselves. You cannot drive to California by putting your foot on the brakes. At a certain point, you have to come off the brake and touch the accelerator, and then you can do something like go to California or Asbury Park or Burlington, Vermont, or Rochester, New York, or wherever the hell you want to go. But not by applying the brake. You apply the brake when you want to stop, when you want to think or pause, or maybe at a red light, or when you need to check your phone, you pull off to the side of the road or a text area. The brake has a job. The accelerator has a job. It's important to know which is which. There's a whole potential branch of spiritual exploration of learning how to clarify your yes and your no. And if we have one problem right now in the world, it is that there is an absolutely outrageous epidemic of people not having any access to their yes or their no. All of this consent drama, this is just a scrim thrown over not being able to say and mean yes or no. So practice. Yes, I want that donut. No, I don't want that donut. Yes, I'm going to give $5 to that homeless person. No, I'm not going to give $5 to that homeless person. The problem when you clarify your yes and your no, is you can start to see the problems you've caused yourself by not clarifying your yes and no in the past. But the way to solve that problem is to do work, commence the project of clarifying your yes and your no in the present so that you have those tools, available tools, just like a pencil, just like a book or a chart. Yes is a tool. No is a tool. Maybe is a tool as long as you mean it. And the key with clarifying these things is meaning it. Never saying yes when you mean no. Never saying no when you mean yes. And if you said yes but you meant no, saying sorry, I meant no. And if you say no when you mean yes, you say sorry, I meant wherever I was going with that. All right, so there's your yes and no rap or rant. That actually would make a pretty good song. Next, we know about this conjunction of retrograde Mercury and Eris. To me, this is about finding yourself inwardly in the midst of all the digital chaos. Finding yourself inwardly in the midst of all the digital chaos. How about that? You can do that, but your reference points need to be made internal. So astrology is an external reference point only for as long as you need it to point you inward in yourself and give you a clue what you might be looking for, and then you look for it. And then you abandon the chart like a raft that you don't need when you've reached the other shore, and then you're on the other shore. And in the case of astrology, that other shore is within your own awareness. So what is that about? I mean, I've been puzzling over this and looking for metaphors and ways to explain this retrograde Mercury making this very exact 3-arc-minute conjunction to Eris in Aries. Eris being the sigil of all the digital disembodiment, which means All the insanity we see in the world, that's digital disembodiment. It's not just disembodiment. You can be the best yoga teacher of them all and still be motherfucking crazy because your consciousness resides outside your body. Just saying. Yoga's not a guarantee. Being an athlete, not a guarantee. These things help. But there's something about understanding where your locus of consciousness actually resides. So it's not just about the body. And yoga is not supposed to be about the body pretty much at all. The whole point of yoga is a vehicle in consciousness, but you would not know that now. You probably can barely imagine Paramahansa Yogananda sitting and teaching a class at the Self-Realization Fellowship in Los Angeles, like in the 50s, said to be a yoga class where everyone's sitting around in suits and ties and shoes and dresses and chairs. Not a yoga mat to be found. Not a single Lululemon water bottle to be found. Okay, so what's this conjunction about? Now, we'll know more when it happens, but there's a clue. There's a clue in this chart. There is an asteroid. And as I explained in my article today, asteroids are thematic, and these slow movers like Eris and Chiron are more about very deep inward work and also major sweeping changes that course through society. And what's so interesting about this is that this conjunction of Eris and Mercury, properly said Mercury conjunct Eris, applying 2-3 arc minutes, is conjunct the asteroid Amor. It's in pencil. Amor is at, I can't see the exact degree, but it's at something like, this is kind of a copy of the chart. It's about 24.25 degrees. So it's partile. It's within the degree of this conjunction, and it brings in a theme. It gives us a clue. The asteroids give us a clue. They say, wondering what this big, important conjunction's about? Here's an asteroid. Now, just so you know, I don't use loose orbs on asteroids. There's too many of them. I understand there are approaches to astrology that like to use 15-degree orbs. That's not going to work doing a minor planet chart. When any of the charts I cast, I start, when I put the minor planets in, I'm looking for things that are exact to the degree, and then maybe I will go out 1 degree on either side to consider it part of the aspect pattern. So Amor is right in the aspect pattern, and it's qualifying, modifying, describing, explaining this retrograde Mercury conjunct Eris, this search for the intact version of yourself inside all of this digital chaos and fragmentation and computers taking over our lives and phones taking over our minds and our memories being held in the cloud. And there's a Netflix or something series called Uploaded, worth watching a couple of episodes of. It's about a service like Verizon Wireless where you pay to have your soul and all of your memories uploaded into a kind of a virtual reality where you go to heaven in the cloud, as long as somebody on Earth keeps paying the bill. Otherwise, you malfunction and you're stuck up there and you can't do anything, like except stay in one room. Anyway, we're in a time when that would be plausible. But what's this Mercury retrograde conjunct Eris about? Well, there's an asteroid there. The asteroid is Amor, and Amor is about the conditions placed on unconditional love. This must be pertaining to oneself. This is not a factor of relationship. It is in Aries. Mercury is retrograde. Aries is about self. The retrograde Mercury points inward. And now we have a clue. So there's something here about doing what the Course in Miracles calls for removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. And I would say that noticing those blocks is an important thing, and there are a lot of conditions that we place on our self-acceptance, self-esteem, self-respect, on our ability to live our lives in any way feeling good. Now, a lot of those conditions kind of get exported into relationships that become these kind of agreements to not grow, agreements to not change, that leave very little room for people to make decisions about who they are, to make life choices, to progress even in their careers and their educations, and to go through the many transformations that we go through as people that ultimately, when we're doing them, bring us closer to who we are. And so this retrograde Mercury Eris conjunction seems to be, because of the presence of Amor there, a reminder to look carefully and to notice and make note of all the reasons we give ourselves not to love and respect and trust ourselves. And maybe you don't think this is important, but the reality is that we bring how we feel about ourselves into every relationship. You cannot trust another person unless you trust yourself, because your decision to trust yourself, to trust the other person, is based upon your ability to even think you can have such a perception. And so I recognize that all of this points us deeper into ourselves than we really maybe think we're ready to go at this very complicated juncture in history. But I promise you that that's an illusion, and I do realize there are so many externals, and the digital environment is so compelling, and we are all so uploaded. And I measure the distance upstairs in my home office and studio, from the distance from the desk to the couch where the guitars are can sometimes seem like it's measured in miles and not a few feet. But I do my best to cross that distance every night and get there. And I think that it's the same way, moving from our digital consciousness, our consciousness as absorbed into and projected into the internet, where there's so many interesting things and where I have so many friends and so many people that I love, and you may be one of them. But you come out of this environment and to cross the distance to a place where we can be alone, be with ourselves, and start to feel, as a matter of practice and devotion, our interior reality, and cross the real divide, the real distance, which is the distance between not accepting yourself for who you are and accepting yourself for who you are. That's my message. I'll be back with what may be, if everything lines up and works out, a rather interesting edition of Planet Waves FM for Friday night. There's a separate Substack for that, accessible at planetwaves.org. The Planet Waves Substack, the astrology Substack, available at planetwaves.eu. PWFM, well, there's a lot of shortcuts, but I'll publish them all one day. But you're probably watching this on Substack or on YouTube. In any event, I'm getting, it has been a long 5 months of interpreting this eclipse. I am looking forward to doing the program tomorrow as early in the day as possible and wrapping up and resting my prefrontal lobe here and getting in the car and driving northwest. All right, you know where to find me. A pleasure as ever. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I know there are some of you who subscribe to my readings somewhat with devotion and follow along and watch these videos. And I want to thank you for being on this journey with me, and thank the Lord that it's not 2020 or 2021 anymore. Had enough of that. Love to all of you. Love to you.